Tashdile everyone and welcome to Tibet This Week, a weekly feature in English that tells you about this week's news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let us look at the headlines first. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration congratulate new United States President. His Holiness the Dalai Lama advises to hold on to courage amidst pandemic. Key factors for survival is self-confidence and hope, says His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Central Tibetan Administration mourns death of Tibetan self-immolator Shurmo. Congressional Executive Commission on China raises concern over increasing repressive tactics in Tibet by China. Representative Tashi Pinzog briefs MP Kokolati on Tibetan Policy and Support Act. Indians urge India to renew its Tibet policy. Kaluyam for Religion and Culture takes part in Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace. His Holiness the Dalai Lama wrote to President Biden to congratulate him on becoming the President of the United States of America. His Holiness the Dalai Lama expressed his appreciation for President Biden prioritizing elevation of the issue of climate change and placed his hope and confidence in the United States' contribution to shaping a more peaceful world. The President of the Central Tibetan Administration, Sigyong Dr. Lobsang Sengke, also congratulated U.S. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris and expressed hope that the new administration will continue the United States' steadfast support for Tibet and the Tibetan people. Congratulating the first women Vice President Kamala Harris, Sigyong said her ascension to America's second highest office as the first woman and the first woman of color is path-breaking, and her becoming the highest-ranking woman in the history of American government marks a new era for women in global politics and leadership. The Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament in exile, Pema Jungne, expressed his optimism in the statement made by Joe Biden earlier in September last year, committing to sanction Chinese officials responsible for human rights violations in Tibet and reassuring his support for the Tibetan people. Joe Biden took the oath of office on Wednesday this week at the U.S. Capitol, Washington, D.C. as the 46th President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
This Friday, His Holiness the Dalai Lama interacted with the students of the British School, New Delhi, on the topic well-being and resilience. Answering to a question on ways to tackle the current challenges faced by the people due to the COVID-19 pandemic, His Holiness admired the hard work of the frontline workers and advised all to carry on with courage and self-confidence.
I feel it's the physical sort of element also related with our emotion. Our emotion full of self-confidence and peace, calm, that affect our body also, I feel. There's too much anxiety, too much fear in mental level. That, I think, also is very harmful for physical element. So now, as is one ancient Indian master say, when we face some problem, we have to analyze the problem thoroughly. Then if there is a way to overcome, then with full of determination and courage, face it. If the problem, no way to overcome, then accept as a reality instead of too much anxiety, anger, frustration. Instead of that, you just accept. So that's, I think, the Indian masters or realistic approach. When we face some problem, we must analyze thoroughly.
In a conversation with Harvard Business School professor and his students on leadership and happiness on Sunday this week, His Holiness said confidence and a sense of hope gives us the will to see our lives as useful and meaningful, a source of inner strength, ultimately leading to peace of mind.
Happiness is I think, very purpose of our daily life for happy life. If you see the things become really unbearable, then die. Worst case, suicide. Even you see, without suicide, but mentally unbearable sort of situation, then that really the will to live reduce. So automatically, you see, you will die like that. So therefore, the self-confidence with hope is the key factor for our survival.
Professor Arthur Brooks, who teaches a class in leadership and happiness at Harvard Business School, moderated the session, at the end of which students engaged in a question and answer session with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The Central Tibetan Administration observed a prayer service to mourn the death of Shurmo, a Tibetan self-immolator in Tibet. Due to the heavy restrictions on the information flow in and from Tibet, the news of Shurmo's death surfaced just last week, more than 5 years after his self-immolation in protest against China's repressive policies in Tibet. Shurmo is one of the at least 155 Tibetans who have self-immolated in a sweeping wave of self-immolation that began in 2009 and in the aftermath of 2008 nationwide uprisings against China. The stranglehold of Chinese rule in Tibet has driven Tibetans inside Tibet to resort to extreme measures to protest the policies and practices that threaten their identity and the annihilation of the culture. In their 2020 annual report, the Congressional Executive Commission on China highlighted their concerns of the Chinese Communist Party's increasingly repressive tactics, such as intimidation of critics, censorship on internet, academia, and journalism, and interference in the foreign governments and citizens. Like the past decades, the CECC observed that there has been no progress of formal negotiations between the 14th Dalai Lama's representatives and the Chinese Communist Party. The Congressional Executive Commission on China released their annual report based on the events between 1st July 2019 to 1st July 2020, detailing its recommendations to Congress and the United States President based on the human rights condition and rule of law developments in China.
During the last 2 years, the China Commission has been at the forefront in generating groundbreaking reporting and driving the strongest China human rights legislation of the last 2 decades, including the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act that was signed into law and focuses State Department resources and attention on the mass internment of Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslim minorities in China, including through identifying and sanctioning those responsible for such abuses. The Tibetan Policy and Support Act that was signed into law as part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. The legislation updates and strengthens the Tibetan Policy Act of 2002 to address emerging human rights, religious freedom, and environmental challenges faced by the Tibetan people.
Tibetan community in India take part in the first phase of Pan-India immunization drive initiated on 16 January on the basis of priority to healthcare and frontline workers. While briefing the press this Thursday, Dr. Tsiring Thamje of Central Council of Tibetan Medicine explained that the government has not made vaccination mandatory, leaving it up to individual decision. She informed that the precautionary guidance relating to the vaccination has been issued and further queries can be clarified by the branch healthcare center staff and those concerned. Addressing concerns of side effects of the vaccine, Dr. Tsunju said minor side effects could persist for 2 days and would show up in the first half an hour immediately after vaccination that will be monitored by the staff on the site. 10 Delek hospital staff, 81 branch health center staff and from monasteries in Mungod, and 10 branch health center staff from Mio were given the vaccination shot. None have reported any side effects. Respective state governments in India are making provisions for Tibetan residents on par with Indian citizens. Representative Tashi Pinzog brought to the attention of the Belgian federal parliamentarian, Mr. Samuel Kokolati, the significant acts passed in the US Congress namely the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act and Tibetan Policy and Support Act, explaining the underlying salient features of the acts during the meeting at the Yuan Ling Buddhist Institution in Huy, Belgium, on Sunday last week. Parliamentarian Kogulati was also briefed in detail on the recent developments on the issue of Tibet by Tashi Pinzok. Lama Zuba of Yuan Ling was also present at the meeting. Following the passage of Tibetan Policy and Support Act by the United States, one of the largest Tibet support groups in India, Indo-Tibetan Friendship Association, urged India to follow the suit. During a felicitation ceremony hosted by the Indo-Tibetan Friendship Association of Dharamshala last Saturday, the president of ITFA, Shri Ajit Nehria, called upon the government of India to rethink its policy on Tibet and give a necessary boost to the effort of the US to push back against China. The association's advisor Subhash Nehria called upon the Indian government to confer Bharat Ratna, the highest civilian award of India, on His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Sigyong Dr. Lobsang Sangye of the Central Tibetan Administration, heads of the three pillars of Tibetan democracy, Deputy Speaker of Tibetan Parliament in Exile, Justice Commissioners, Karluns, heads of autonomous bodies, members of Tibetan Parliament, ITFA President Ajit Nehria, ITFA's former President Ajay Singh Mankotia, Deputy Mayor Onkar Nehria of Dharamshala Municipal Corporation, ITFA's advisor Ram Swarup, and ITFA advisor Subhash Nehria were among the attendees at the ceremony. Kalin Venerable Kama Gile Yutho Department of Religion and Culture, Central Tibetan Administration virtually took part in the 13th Executive Council meeting of Asian Buddhist Conference for Peace organized by Sri Lankan APCP National Centre on Thursday last week. In his speech, Kalin expressed his thoughts on the need to deeply contemplate on three fundamental causes: the causes of the globe, the causes of the Buddha Dharma, and the causes of the Buddhist, and then carefully interrelate them. He said the rest would follow by itself. That is all for today. See you next week.